Typhoon Koinu has made landfall in southern Taiwan with record-breaking winds of more than 350 kilometers per hour. Millions of people were told to stay home as the typhoon swept past the island's largely rural south. Koinu is only the second typhoon to hit Taiwan directly in 4 years. The last one you might remember was Typhoon Haikui just last month. And let's bring in DW's East Asia correspondent James Chater in Taipei for more. James, tell us how serious this is looking. What can you tell us about Typhoon Koinu's impact so far?
Well, here in Taipei, in Taiwan's capital, the impact has been fairly minimal. But in the south of Taiwan's mainland, it's a completely different story. At least 190 people have been injured by this storm, which hit Taiwan as a Category 4 hurricane. As a result, most domestic flights and a few international flights have been cancelled. Fortunately, as you mentioned, Claire, there are no reports of deaths so far. But it's really in these smaller islands off Taiwan's mainland that the biggest impact is being felt. Early reports suggesting that one of the world's most powerful gusts of wind ever recorded hit the small island, Orchid Island, off Taiwan's southeast coast, a gust there of over 200 miles per hour, close to 350 kilometers per hour. So as for what happens next, the typhoon is now expected to weaken a little bit as it moves towards China's southern coast. But officials here are still warning that heavy rain could continue to blast these southern parts of Taiwan later into this evening here.
And has Taiwan made adequate preparations to withstand these kinds of conditions?
Well, Taiwan is fairly used to this sort of situation. Typhoons are fairly regular. The island's situated in a tropical zone, so there's a fairly well-oiled machine that springs into action in advance of these storms. Today, millions of people have been ordered to stay at home, and that's across mostly Taiwan's south and central areas. And it's really those measures that limit deaths and injuries. But the reason that Taiwan has these types of measures is because we've seen really deadly typhoons in Taiwan before. In 2009, more than 500 people were killed because of a typhoon, many of those people in the same areas that are being impacted. So the government's continuing to urge caution at this moment as some of this extreme weather continues to hit the southern parts of Taiwan.
Give us a sense of how often we see these kinds of storms in Taiwan. How frequent is this as an occurrence?
Well, as you mentioned, this is the second typhoon to make landfall in Taiwan this year. But despite being in an active tropical zone before that, there hadn't been any typhoons that had hit Taiwan for about 4 years. In Taiwan, that had created a really precarious situation, actually, in terms of drought that had affected much of southern and central Taiwan. That's where many of the manufacturing facilities of Taiwan's world-leading semiconductor industry are based. So as of now, there's no indication that they've been impacted by this current typhoon. But I think, amongst people within Taiwan, there'll be necessary caution and concern that people are treated for injuries and infrastructure is repaired as a result of this current typhoon. But I think there will be some people within Taiwan that are actually a little bit grateful that, the typhoons that we've seen more recently seem to be alleviating what was a pretty bad drought situation in Taiwan before this year.
Okay, so one extreme replacing another. Thank you so much for that update. That is James Chater for us in Taipei.